Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Kokinzie. Welcome to this edition of Game Changers Unit Number 1. If you are not on our Facebook group, which you can find at themasterace.com, head over there. You can check out all the units. But this is Unit Number 1. We're teaching how to build residual income in today's modern economy, how to build wealth now, how to be able to retire early, all through this concept of residual income. So Unit 1 is very simple. What's linear income? What's residual income? And this is important because our entire economy is based upon what we know about money, right? And what we've been taught about money. And this is a long story, a long history lesson, and all that kind of stuff. But what you need to know is this. This is super important. So most of us, and by most of us, I mean about 99% of the world works for linear income. What in the world is linear income? Linear income is where you go to work to get paid. If you don't go to work, you don't get paid. It's really as simple as that. You trade time for money. You're only as good as your last paycheck. And so this is important to know because this is what a lot of society has taught us, that in order to become independently wealthy, you go to college to get a good job so that eventually at some point in time you'll be able to retire. But I'm just going to tell you something, that is rarely the way this thing works. You need to understand that if you truly want to be able to have a true retirement, you can't focus on the linear structure, but you have to focus on the second category, which we call the residual structure, okay? Residual income. And that's important because residual income is a game changer. It will totally change the way that you look at life. And here's the thing, guys. You don't have to wait until you're 65 to 70 years old in order to retire. You can retire in the next 10 years if you choose to, as long as you're focusing on the right things. If you're focusing on residual income, this is something that you're going to be able to do sooner than later. I know the norm. It says that we retire at 65 to 70. But you know what? Why? Why? Do you know the average person who retires at the age of 65 to 70 only lives for about 7 years after that? Question for you, why in the world do you want to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week for 40 to 50 to 60 years of your life to only be able to retire for 7 years? And who knows what other types of health issues that you're going to have along the way to make those 7 years less enjoyable. So why don't we work to live rather than live to work? That's where residual income comes into play. So residual income, in all reality, is where you work once, and if you do it right, you continually get paid for the work that you do over and over and over. And if you do it right, not only do you get paid over and over and over again, but it is also something that can get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, if it's something that you do right, you can also have the opportunity to pass it on from generation to generation to generation. So to your kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, et cetera, et cetera. And that's an important thing to know. So residual income is super important for you if you want to have a life-changing world. Residual income gives you the time and financial freedom to do the things that you want to do. A lot of times people ask me, well, what do you do? And I say often I'm a stay-at-home dad with a stay-at-home wife. People are confused by that, and usually they come to the question, well, who makes the money? Well, residual income makes the money. It's the investments that I did in businesses specifically that allowed me to be able to be a stay-at-home dad with a stay-at-home wife. Now, let me say this. Notice I said the word businesses. There are investment vehicles as well, such as Roth IRAs, mutual funds, things like that, that you can make residual income from. That's true. But even then, it doesn't mean that those are good options to retire early. They will help you retire earlier, but still not early. Again, when I say all this, I'm saying, wouldn't you much rather retire in the next 10 years than the next 30 years? That's what I'm talking about. And that's what residual income through business systems allows us to do that. So it all comes down to something that we call the cash flow quadrant. And that's what this is about. The cash flow quadrant is absolutely 100% something that you need to know and that you need to understand. This, if you get this in your head, will totally change your life in the way that you look at money, business, and jobs, career, college, etc., etc. This little nugget, this little tidbit of information here will absolutely help you change the game. Now, I'm going to say things here that some of you, you might not like, but it needs to be understood, because if you don't come to the reality of what I'm going to say, you're going to be stuck in the same rat race that you're going to continually work for the rest of your life. So this is the cash flow quadrant. You have two sections on this cash flow quadrant that are divided up in a total of 4 quadrants. On the left-hand side, you have the linear income side, and on the right-hand side, you have the residual income side. Totally two different sides. 99% of the world works in the left-hand side, which is the linear income side, and only about 1% of the world works for the residual income side. What you're saying, Jason, well, if that's the case, how come more people aren't working in the residual income side? It's very simple. Most people don't even know the fact that residual income is a possibility, because we weren't taught residual income. Our whole entire life, we were taught to be employees. We weren't taught to be entrepreneurs. And so because we were taught to be employees and not entrepreneurs, the majority of people never even heard the word residual income. So look at this. In the top left-hand quadrant, again, the whole left side is linear income. The right side is residual income. But the top left-hand quadrant, look what it says right there. It says employee. As you look at the middle there, it says employee. And that's important for you to understand, okay? Because this is a large majority of what you are right there, is an employee. You trade time for money. Here's the thing. You have a job. They dictate your life. They tell you when to show up, when to go home, when you can go on vacation, when you can't go on vacation, days that you can't do this, things that you can't do here, et cetera, et cetera. They really own you, right? You are a slave to the system. There is no leverage whatsoever with a job. Then we have the next quadrant, which is the bottom left quadrant, which is what we call the self-employed. I'm just going to say something here. This is the most confused quadrant. This is the quadrant that a lot of people are in, not nearly as many as the employed quadrant, but a lot of people are in, and they say, in the self-employed quadrant, they say, well, I have a business. The problem is you don't have a business. You own a job. Or a lot of times what we say is the job owns you. Here's the reason why. Now, I'll be honest with you and say that I would much rather be self-employed than employed, but you still don't have a true business. You have a job that you own, and there's still a lot of time, and there's very, very little leverage to none at all. Here's the reason why. Some people say, well, I own a business, I own a salon, or I own a landscape company, or whatever. But the thing is, you have to show up every day and cut somebody's hair, or you have to show up every week and cut somebody's lawn in order for you to get the money. And so that's very much having or owning a job. And that's an important thing for people to understand. You don't leverage your life on self-employment. So self-employment is not a business. Self-employment is owning a job. And this is the one that probably is a lot harder for a lot of you to maybe swallow, because it's not fun to think about that. But there is a bright side to self-employment. I'm going to say something very, very carefully, and I think it's important for you to understand. Self-employment can become a business, but not all self-employment businesses or jobs can become a business. So some can, some can't. That needs to be understood. The two examples I gave you of a salon and a landscaping company actually are something that could become a true business. Which actually brings us over to the right-hand quadrant. The right-hand quadrant is very, 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 very important, okay? The right-hand quadrant is the residual income side, and we need to understand what is the difference between linear income and residual income, specifically self-employment, and as you see at the top, being a business owner. Because again, a lot of the self-employed people would say, well, I've got a business. So what's the difference between a self-employed person and a true person who makes residual income in a business? It really comes down to this. A true business owner, as you can see here, has a system. They have a system. And that's important for people to understand. When you have a system in play, that means you have leveraged income. You're able to leverage things, whether that's time, whether that's money, or even people. You can leverage. You own a system, and people work for you. That's why I said when we go back to the self-employment vehicle, if you have a salon or you have a landscaping company, there's a bunch of other stories out there of different types of self-employment jobs that can become a system. Is that in the beginning, when you're doing all the work, week in, week out, you're cutting hair every single day, well, you're just a self-employed job owner. But eventually, if you want to make that a business system where true residual income is coming into play, then what you end up doing is now you start hiring people that cut hair, and you walk away because you start hiring a bunch of employees. So when you think about a business system when it comes to a hair salon, you might go something from you working in your own little mom and pop shop to then franchising to something like a sports clips or a cost cutter or a great clips or something like that, where you own it, but you now hire up all the people who cut hair. So understand, business owners own a system. That's what they do. They own a system. And that's important for everyone to understand, because that's the game changer within the world of everything that we do. Give the example of McDonald's. If I were to ask you, McDonald's, what is McDonald's business? All right, give you a second here. Question. Did you say burgers and fries? Did you say food? Well, if you did, here's the problem. That's not actually their business. Their business is actually real estate. McDonald's owns more real estate than any other person or business in the world. How often do you see a McDonald's at a bad location? You don't, do you? That's important for us to understand. Now, what do they do with that real estate? That real estate by itself just doesn't make money. Well, it kind of does with the appreciation of the land, but not on a continual basis. So now they need to use that real estate and put in a system in order for that to happen. So what is that system? That system then is burgers and fries. So they're generating revenue on that property, but really when all is said and done, that property is what is their business. They own more real estate than anyone else in the world. Isn't that awesome? Now, the last quadrant is investor quadrant. And I'll be very honest and say I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the investor quadrant. It really comes down to this. Because even multimillionaires are terrible at this. Many multimillionaires lose millions and millions and millions of dollars in the investment quadrant because it's a lot harder to obtain that residual income in the investment. Again, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all kinds of different vehicles out there that you can invest money, other businesses where they're hands off, just a lot of different things. So this is a hard quadrant. So I'm going to just encourage you, obviously, since you're watching this means you're somewhat of a beginner in this. And because of that, then I really recommend you actually to avoid this as much as possible. I'm not saying that it is bad, okay? I'm just saying it usually takes a little bit harder of a time to learn how to really manhandle this. The best quadrant to be in is the business owner. You get a lot of leverage from being a business owner. And so, guys, I encourage you today to think about residual income. Think about the cash flow quadrant and how this can change your life, because this right here is a total game changer. Hey, listen, if you're watching this for the first time, you don't know where all these videos are, you can go to The Master Ace, join the Facebook group. Would love to have you over there, themasterace.com. Hopefully learn something. Drop a comment. If you have questions below, drop a comment. Would love to hear what you have to say.